Law firm success strategies will begin after a brief word from today's sponsor, Answering Legal. Visit answeringlegal.com to learn more about our virtual receptionist team.
I've been utilizing Answering Legal for my firm since 2015, and truth be told, it was a game changer for me. I can be anywhere, and I'm getting my phones answered by Answering Legal. A strategic partner, as I call Answering Legal, provides a great reward. What is that reward? It's time. Time for whatever I want to do. As a private practitioner, I would highly recommend Answering Legal to other private practitioners. Now, every call goes answered.
And I'd like to personally welcome you to the first live episode of my podcast, Law Firm Success Strategies. I created this show for law firm leaders and for those who aspire to be better leaders so they can guide their team to achieve peak performance and live the life they've always wanted. My goal is to create a new kind of show that reflects my unique experience and perspectives as a lawyer, executive, and executive coach. And that is that lawyers don't need a whole new set of skills to be great leaders. We just need to know how to configure our skills to address new challenges, and that curiosity is the key to becoming the leader that your team needs. So we're going to push the envelope and get you to question the assumptions and mindsets that keep so many lawyers stuck. Joining me today is Walt Hampton, and I couldn't imagine a better guest for my first full episode of the podcast. You see, over the last 15 or so years, I've come to rely on Walt's wisdom, patience, perspective, and guidance as a friend, my coach, and even sometimes as my lawyer. Walt's got a way of asking great, difficult questions that help you get right to the heart of a matter and see things in new ways. And that's what we plan to do for you today. And today's topic is mindfulness for peak performance and mental health for you and your team. Welcome, Walt.
I am so happy to be here, Doug. It's a thrill. Congratulations on your first podcast episode. And I'm really excited to be part of a law firm summer reboot camp. I was just before we got on thinking about how summer is often a time where people don't do too much. They rest, which they ought to. They don't do much marketing or biz dev. And then Labor Day comes, of course, and all hell breaks loose. And we're back to the races as lawyers. This is a wonderful time to reboot and to double down on what will make your life and your business amazing. So thank you for having me. I'm so looking forward to our time together.
Yeah, me too. And what place to start is, you started your legal career as a criminal defense lawyer, and both in a big firm and then in your own practice. So, what led you to consider mindfulness as a way to help yourself improve and grow your practice?
So I actually started off as a civil litigation lawyer. I came out of Cornell in 1984 and went with the big firm and worked the 70 and 80-hour weeks. And in the early 90s, I began my own firm, and that began a sojourn of more than 20 years as the managing partner of a firm. And I continued to do civil litigation, Doug. But I found it to be like paint drying on the side of a house on a cold winter day. And so I did transition about 10 years into my practice to doing criminal defense, which I loved, and it was very fulfilling at a lot of junctures in those decades. But there was an event during that second iteration of my practice, and that was my first marriage fell apart. And when I'm talking to law students and lawyers, I tell the story about how I didn't get the balance of work and life and family right. And I, against my wildest imaginations, became the single dad of three young boys. And for a dozen years, I was the primary caregiver, and I raised those boys certainly for the first 5 of those dozen years on my own. And friends, I had hair before then. And so doing life, doing practice, managing a law firm while being a sole parent, single parent, it required a different way of doing it. And I fell into the work of Eastern studies and Buddhism and this thing called mindfulness before it was a thing. Well, it's always been a thing, but it came to the West in the late 60s through 3 amazing human beings. But this idea of approaching life mindfully was something that I had to do because otherwise I was going to lose my mind in those years.
Yeah, there's some sort of event that precipitated it. I know that, many of the lawyers that are listening to our program are often small firm lawyers and solo lawyerpreneurs, and they struggle with work-life balance and finding time for this practice they might find squishy, this mindfulness practice. So can you talk about what that is and how you've managed to integrate it into your busy schedule now as an executive coach and a CEO of a thriving business, and the benefits you've seen in terms of productivity and tangible things that lawyers like to hear about?
Yes. So let me burst the bubble of work-life balance. There is no such thing. Work-life balance is bullshit, especially for lawyers. I know that as the managing partner of a law firm. I know it now, as you said, overseeing our firm, which is a global personal and professional development firm. Balance is a myth. And I know as a trial lawyer, if I was on trial, if I was picking a jury, if I was preparing an appellate argument, if I was overseeing my lawyers who were getting ready for a big commercial closing, there was no such thing as balance. It doesn't happen. And so seeking balance is a zero-sum game. What I want to invite you into is a mindset shift that being mindful, being present in every moment is the key. And mindfulness sounds woo-woo, and I tend to avoid it when I'm doing trainings with lawyers and law firms in the first instance, because there's a little bit of resistance to it. It sounds fluffy. It sounds it's not tactical enough. Mindfulness is about showing up here in this moment. And friends, if you're on this podcast, it's the only moment we have. The email from 10 minutes ago is gone, and your appointment in an hour is not yet here. And so the only moment that we have any efficacy over, any agency over, any ability to sink into and enjoy is here now. And so mindfulness really is about an ability to be present in this moment. And the present is called a present because it's a present. It's the greatest gift that we have. It's the only gift that we have. And it's the only moment that is guaranteed to us is this present moment. And so mindfulness starts with that. And from that place, we can make more resourceful decisions and choices in our life as to how we want to orchestrate it, how we want to architect it.
Because mindfulness, after years of you encouraging me to try this mindfulness thing, I was one of those resistant ones. And I was at a point in my life where I had this same kind of, I suppose I'll give it a try. I got to do something. And it was remarkable for me, as you may recall. But I did see it as an abstract concept. Can you share like some specific mindful techniques or practices that that you've used to enhance your focus and help you, improve your bottom line?
Yes. So, and not just my bottom line, but my enjoyment of life.
Yeah.
Joy ought to be the touchstone of our life and our work, not necessarily the bottom line. Money is great. It gives us lots of choices. Our careers, our life as a lawyer is one of the, I think the law is one of the greatest gifts, the greatest careers, the greatest callings on the planet. And mindfulness will allow us to discover that satisfaction and joy in a much deeper way. Now, let me just also deconstruct mindfulness from meditation, because oftentimes people go mindfulness and meditation, and they conflate the two. And so let me pull those apart and bring some distinctions to that. So I'm on this podcast with you right now, and that's all there is right now is this podcast. It would be very easy, because you and I both know what our days look like from here to the end of the day, to be thinking about what the rest of the day looks like. So mindfulness, and I'll draw back in meditation practice because I think it's important, but mindfulness is an awareness that I'm here with you, Doug, and with these amazing folks who are doing this for Law Firm Summer Boot Camp. And that's a gift to be here in this present moment. Taking that into our day-to-day lives, we have conversations with our partners, spouses, significant others going out the door. And it's like, yes, dear. And then 20 minutes later, we don't remember the conversation. We are connecting with our assistant or our para who makes our life really easy. And what we're really thinking about is the email from that opposing counsel that we're really jacked up about. And so doing one thing and one thing well and connecting in each and every moment is a starting place for mindfulness. And so, as you know, Doug, we ran with mindfulness 16 years ago, before it was a thing, and before I could sell mindfulness to law firms about as easily as I could sell hot tubs to people in hell. Now there's an understanding that mindfulness actually does matter, but the way we've disguised it over the years is under time management and productivity. And so if it's easier for you to digest, dear friends, around this idea of mindfulness, what the evidence shows, counselors, is that we actually can't multitask. All we can do is one high level thing at a time. It's all we can do. Now, that doesn't mean I couldn't tie my shoe while I'm having this conversation with you. A lower level task, higher level task, but I couldn't be fully present, Doug, in this conversation with you and be over on a side window reading an email or responding to a text. I couldn't do it. Well, I can. But what the MRI studies show is that what the brain actually does is toggle. It toggles back and forth. And if you're listening to our podcast today, you are a really good toggler. You get an A in toggling. And that's great, except that toggling decreases your productivity. And here's how. When you toggle back and forth between one thing and another, thinking you're an amazing multitasker, there's this thing called attentional residue. And what happens when you go from a conversation with your associate to the email that just pinged in your box and back to the conversation with your associate, the residue has an attentional cost, a productivity cost. It takes at least, I've seen multiple studies around this, it takes at least 11 minutes to get fully re-engaged again. And some studies have shown it takes as long as 25 minutes to get completely engaged again. So I don't know about you. In the latter years of my practice, I was measuring the value of my existence in 6-minute increments. That's like that's a lot of money to leave on the table if you're going to be toggling back and forth. And so, as a practical matter, as a physiological matter, all we can do is show up in the present. And if we show up fully in the present, we are more powerful and more effective. And let me say this too. In this day where there is so much distraction, there is so much coming at us all of the time. The greatest gift that you can give the people you love, the greatest gift that you can give your spouse, your significant other, your partner, the greatest gift you can give your para, your associate, your executive assistant, the greatest gift of all you can give to your clients is your 100% attention, because that is really rare in this day and age.
Yeah, and just this week, I've got some small law firms that hire me as a coach for their associates to help them learn all the stuff you didn't learn in law school about how to be an effective lawyer and not burn out and so forth. And just this week, I was talking to one of those associates who said she was frustrated with her partner because she would try to go in and communicate and her partner wouldn't look up from your computer screen. And so it wasn't just a problem with productivity for the lawyer, but that had a trickle effect on everybody that this other partner would interact with. So it demotivated the associate, and I'm sure it happened with the staff. So it's not just about your own productivity and switching, but it's the ripple effect. And for many small firm lawyers, it's the kind of thing that even when you're listening to a client and you're in your head thinking about what you're going to say next, so you can say it as soon as they're done talking, that's not the same thing as being fully present, right? So of lawyers in the middle of their busy day, Walt, and they hear your voice and say, be present when, their assistant walks in, but their mind's going a million miles a minute and they're trying to think about, how do I do this? What's one thing they could do to give themselves, build the habit of being present?
Let's back up. It's a very important question, but it's an advanced question.
Okay.
So let me back it up one step.
All right.
Very early on, I had the gift of meeting and having an afternoon of tea with Joseph Goldstein, who was one of the co-founders of the Insight Meditation Center, the Buddhist Center for Buddhist Studies in Barre, Massachusetts, and one of his co-founders, Jack Kornfield, out at Spirit Rock and on the West Coast. But we were talking about exactly this, and Joseph said, well, start with something like simple that you do all the time, like you turn on a light switch, or you're brushing your teeth. And the practice begins with, I'm turning on the light switch. I'm turning on the light switch. I'm here turning on the light switch. Or if it's washing the dishes, here I am washing the dishes. And it's naming for yourself, labeling what you're doing in the moment. And over time, we'll talk about the time. And, I saw your notes. Thank you so much for sending those about, the ROI on all of this for us, which we'll talk about. But it begins with the littlest of things. I am no saint here. After 16 years, 18 years of meditation practice, and my meditation practice is 30 years long, of teaching mindfulness, I can tell you that my mind is as running as anybody else who's listening to this podcast today. But I'm calling myself back and say, I'm talking to Doug. I'm having this conversation with Doug. I'm not going to think about that thing that's in my inbox. I'm here with Doug. And so, advancing into our busy day, the associate comes in and needs something. Now, I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to have a little sidebar here with you in a moment about that. But let's say the associate comes in and it's an important matter and you want to talk with them about it. What it requires us to do, what it invites us to do, is to take a breath, because the breath is a great touchstone. To take a breath and go, okay, I was doing that. They need my attention right now. And in that space, we have the opportunity now to go, okay, I'm talking with them about this problem. So it's slowing the internal action down long enough to switch gears. But the basic practice of mindfulness is in every moment of time being present to, wow, this grocery line is really long. Wow, I hated the DMV last time I was here, and I hate it all over again. And wow, what does that hate feel like? Yeah, it feels just about as bad or maybe worse than the last time I was here. But experiencing how you're feeling the feels in each and every moment. And so, as life becomes more complex, of course, and time speeds up, it becomes more challenging. And this is one of the gifts of meditation that we'll get to. But even in the midst of a trial, one of my trial mentors, when I tried my first federal jury trial, he said, if at all, and this was before I had any idea about teaching mindfulness, he said, it's okay if you go over to the counsel table, sit down with your pencil and your legal pad. That's when legal pads were a thing. Some of you might not remember them. But you sit down with your pencil and your legal pad and look up and just say, Your Honor, may I have a moment? That was magic. That was like this magic thing. And of course, the court goes, sure. Now, if you do it long enough, the court's going to inquire as to whether you stroked out or not. But you actually have some time to take some breaths and collect yourself, which is magical. And that's mindfulness. Now, anyway, I don't want to get ahead of myself. I'll leave you to ask the question.
Sure. Well, we could go on for. We've got about 20 minutes left, and we could go on for this forever. But the thing that reminds me, you reminded me of is one of my private coaching clients, David, who was having this problem, and one of the things he was frustrated about was it was so chaotic when he got home. And so we had been talking about being intentional and being mindful. And so the specific thing was, well, David, before you get out of your truck and walk into your chaotic house with your teenager and your wife and all this going on, take a deep breath and ask yourself the question, how do I want to show up? What experience do I want my family to have with me when I walk in the door? And he's like, could it be that simple? And I said, well, try it out. So it was a few sessions later, he reported back and he says, my wife said this morning when I told her we were going to be meeting that I'm a better person to be around since we started working together. Fast forward to this past May after a couple of years of graduating. And I said, David, what do you think the most impactful thing was of our year worth of work together? And he said it was being intentional, being mindful about what experience he wanted to create for people. So the power of what you're talking about you and I talk about smart person syndrome. We think simple things aren't valuable. But what's the,
but I just want to anchor the beauty and the power of the example, because it just extends what I said about, breathing over your legal pad in court, or taking that breath in the moment before you connect with your associate or your para, creating intentional, I love that use of the word that you use, intentional space. So I'd come home, my office was, maybe 5 minutes from my law firm. So I'm finished a contentious deposition and I'm racing home to make dinner for my 3 boys and to send the daycare provider home. And it would be really easy to take the adversarial tension of a deposition into the house. So having that practice, I'm sitting in the driveway thinking, okay, I'm here now. I'm stepping into my role as dad. I'm stepping into my role as dinner maker. I wonder what box or can I'm going to use tonight. And being present in that transition was critically important. And coming back to one of the things we do is time management and productivity, which is I shouldn't tell this to our market, but it's mindfulness in disguise, is encouraging the intentional scheduling of white space in between our appointments so that we actually have the space to go, okay, that's done. And now I'm going to move on to working on the brief.
Yeah, you've been working with lawyers and busy high performing executives for many years. And we've kind of touched on this, but I wanted to kind of zero in on it about the misconceptions or resistance that you've encountered when introducing this practice to them. And they in my experience, like, well, who's got time for that? I'll sleep when I'm dead. So I'll take care of myself when I'm dead. So how do you address these concerns so that lawyers recognize the value and the ROI for them as a person and for their practice?
Well, as I've alluded to before, as lawyers, we like evidence. We like research. It's got to be evidence-based, research-based. So there is MRI evidence and deep research out of Harvard, out of the University of Massachusetts, based upon MRI studies and brain chemistry studies, that a mindfulness practice, even over 6 weeks, reduces cortisol significantly, reduces inflammation, increases productivity and performance. There's just brain science around that. So that's one way into it. Mindfulness, if the science doesn't work, then maybe a little fear. Mindfulness, in its increase of focus and acuity, decreases significantly our error rate. And friends, that's the M word. We are less prone to making fatal errors that equal malpractice when we are mindful and intentional. We also, if we're actually building a business, all of a sudden hashtag burnout is a thing. We see hashtag burnout, hashtag trending now everywhere because it's actually a thing. And if we don't want to burn out, if we actually want to create something that's going to be lasting and satisfying, well, then we've got to go the distance. And so mindfulness reduces, and I would argue even eliminates burnout. And then finally, the way in for me is if you're going to be growing a firm and bringing in Gen Y, Gen Z team members, you're going to have to give more than lip service to emotional wellness, mindfulness, well-being, because you will not recruit and retain good talent if you do not do that. And so for all of those foregoing reasons, Your Honor, I would argue that mindfulness really matters.
It's important not just for the lawyer, but for their teams, because I see so much, especially with small firm lawyers, they're looking at hiring. There is this frustration with, I never had work. They want work-life balance. They want flexibility. I never had that stuff. Why can't they just do what I did? And there's this deep-seated kind of resentment that I think really gets in the way. And so now we're talking about, helping their teams unlock the power of mindfulness. And, I think it's a critical part of a leader's job. But why does it make sense for a law firm or even a small lawyer's office to, invest their precious time and make the effort in helping their people learn these skills of mindfulness?
Well, I guess if we can't convince ourselves that it's good for of productivity and performance and making more money. If we can't convince ourselves, if we can't connect the dots there, um, it is in this moment of time. You know, I saw some marketing collateral from several big DC firms that were competing for lawyers, new lawyers, graduating lawyers in the DC market, leading in their recruiting materials with, and we provide you with emotional wellness and well-being training. Young lawyers want this. When I started teaching this work 15 years ago, and I've done a lot of work in law schools, I get the question at the end of the presentation, well, thank you, Mr. Hampton, that's really nice, but I'm working at this big firm and they want us to work 24/7, 365, and that's just on Tuesday. How do we do this? And my response back then was, well, I've got some good news and some bad news. The bad news is you probably can't do much about it. The good news is all of us baby boomers are going to die and you're going to step into the role of managing partners. The problem you identify, though, Doug, is, you know, my own partner said it to me, you know, shit rolls downhill. Well, that's what ends up happening for the senior millennials who are stepping into leadership and management, is they say exactly what you said, which is, well, I didn't have any balance, so why should I give it to my team? You give it to your team because we can do this amazing profession in a much better way that actually serves at a much higher level and gives you freedom and joy. And, you know, I'm a big fan of the F word. I like fun. I like joy. I like satisfaction. I like freedom. This is what will give it to you.
It's so true. You know, one of the things I know that when lawyers are, you know, some of people might be listening and saying, I get this idea, I get this big concept. And then, you know, if people know us, they know we talk about routines and being intentional about your day. If somebody wanted to say, I want to try to test this out, I want to try to create this habit for us. And we've talked a little bit about how to do it in the moment. But we also know there's power in routines. So what are some routines that a lawyer could do in their day, the beginning or the end or the middle of their day, to help them start to see the benefit of being mindful and intentional?
Yes. And I love how you've linked to those two words, because often it's mindfulness and meditation. And I want to leave time, Doug, in our conversation today to talk about meditation, because for me, that is, has been, will be the single most powerful tool in my life.
So why don't we let's talk about that now. Let's come.
Well, but I want to roll. Okay. Yes. I'm
just teasing. Okay.
Got to keep everybody in pain. So in the next episode, Doug, we'll talk about it. No,
after these messages. Wait, there are no messages. Go ahead.
It starts with what you've already alluded to, which is some intentional practices and disciplines. So what many of my days were like as a single dad, where, you know, the alarm would go off at 6:45. I'd run up the stairs to get the kids up, go downstairs, begin making breakfast, run back up, get the kids up, mediate the fights, run back downstairs to make lunches, go back upstairs to get the kids up and help them find their socks. And then all of this before 7:30, getting out the door to take them to daycare or to school, and then run to the office to grab the file, and then get the call as I was going into court that somebody had a fever or head lice or something again. It was just, you know, it was, we probably can't say shit show on a live podcast, but if I could, I would say that. Right. If I could. So I discovered that I needed to back up some time. And so I created morning practices. And my morning practices that began back in the late 90s, I began to back up. I got up earlier. There's a reason that having morning disciplines in the morning make a difference. I started, don't try this at home, don't try it all at once, but I get up every day at 4:30, still to this day. I backed it up slowly, like boiling a frog. Maybe it was 6:15 and then 6 o'clock. But I continue to have a journaling practice, a reflective reading practice, a meditation practice, my aerobic exercise. And I began to create those within the container of the morning because that's all I had. Because the rest of the day was just this vortex of chaos often. And by anchoring my day with morning practices, it began to give me an anchor that felt safe, that felt grounded, that allowed me from that place to show up during the day more mindfully, more intentionally. So people always talk about morning routines. You and I have talked about morning routines. You can have lots of different morning routines. I'm happy, Doug will tell you how to get a hold of me. I'm happy to talk about morning routines and the variety of morning routines. We did a mindfulness program in Arizona. It was like, what is your journaling practice? I have one. I can tell you what a good journaling practice is. But I do want to just save a minute here to talk about meditation. When I teach meditation in my workshops, and we do them for law firms, and I'd be happy to do one for your law firm, I often use as a prop a holiday snow globe. And I'll shake the globe up, and of course the flakes swirl around in the globe, and then I put the globe down on the table or the podium, and the flakes settle. The gifts of meditation over time is that the flakes in your mind, the flakes in your day, they begin to settle, and you're able to see more clearly, more consistently. That's gift number one. Gift number two is you become significantly less reactive. If you were to look at a high diver on an Olympic diving team, it looks as if it is this one thing. They go up the stairs, they go down the board, they bounce on the end of the board, they go up and they go into the water. It looks to you as if this one continuous stream. For a practiced Olympic level diver, it is like a freeze frame that happens. Each step up the stairs, each step along the board, the launch, the arc, the peak, the turn into the water, it's all like freeze frames. And over time, the gift of meditation is your reactivity settles down. And so if one of my kids did something stupid, like my 16-year-old who had just gotten his driver's license, and I had just replaced the garage door, and I'm making dinner, and I see him come into the driveway and forget to stop and go through the garage door, I would like to remove his liver at that point in time. But the gift of meditation was that I was able to slow the action down, and I could be less reactive, less angry, less surgical in wanting to remove his liver. It allowed me to show up in a more loving and compassionate and understanding way. And that is the other gift of meditation. And then the third is the power of presence. The more you meditate, and it can be a 5-minute meditation, you don't need any tools or toys or apps unless you want them. There are plenty of them. 5 minutes of following your breath in and out, noting every time your mind goes to the deposition, every time your mind goes to the kid who's just driven through the garage door, coming back to the breath, sitting on the cushion every single day. And over time, the gifts of that, Doug, are the ROI on that is extraordinary. And I always laugh because I never tell, this is the problem with you having me on this, because if people bring me in now, I've spoiled the trick. But rarely, if I come into your firm, I will not tell you. In fact, I will tell you something completely opposite. That I never tell people where we're going to do meditation, because that even sounds like more wacky to most lawyers that we're going to do. But in every workshop I do, I sandbag folks at the end of the workshop by saying, "Will you try something with me?" And I introduce meditation And every single workshop we do, people go, oh my God, if you told us we were going to do this, we wouldn't have come, but that was the most amazing experience. And so I want to invite you in, friends, to experiment with a meditation practice. But even if that's not your jam yet, that's okay. Not everything we talked about today will be your jam. But if all you begin to take away right now is an opportunity to slow the roll, that would be enough. I had a brilliant business coach, and he wasn't even talking about mindfulness and meditation. He would just say, slow down, Walt. Just slow down, slow the roll. And if you slow the roll, if you just slow down, life will become sweeter. I do a lot of outdoor work, high altitude mountaineering. I'm emergency medical trained, EMT paramedic. I had a trauma doctor as a lead trainer in my emergency medical work. And he said to the class, if you come to the scene of an accident and you have a patient who's alive, you actually have time to make considered decisions. You can slow down because patients who are going to live don't die in seconds. It's minutes and hours. You have time. And friends, we have an amazing profession. We're lawyers. We are not trauma surgeons. And this is from a trauma surgeon. We can slow the roll. We can be more present. And in that, we can become more mindful and intentional.
It's so good. You reminded me. I've worked with one of my clients was a CEO. He had just taken over a business, and he was in a hurry to do lots of things. And so we weren't talking about mindfulness. I just kept asking questions that caused him to slow down. So then, he overachieved his goals by 30%. And so I interviewed him at the end of the engagement, and I said, and one of the things he said was, while we were working together, you were getting kind of irritating because you kept making me slow down. But I'm so glad that I did because I made better decisions. Okay, so good. So he stuck with it. Just want on this, in the few minutes we have left, real quickly, I think that there's some fear that if you engage in meditation or mindfulness, you'll somehow lose your edge as a litigator. Like you will become more peaceful and not as aggressive, or you how do you address that objection for lawyers who say, well, if what I'm doing right now is working, I'm great at my litigation, I don't want to lose my edge?
As a trial lawyer, after having meditated for a decade before that, when I was doing active trial work, I could remember a witness's testimony for 3 days. A witness 3 days into her testimony or his testimony might say something that conflicted with 3 days before. And I'd say, well, Mr. Brown, on such and such a day, at such an hour, you said such and such. And you'd say, oh, no, I didn't say that. And I'd say, Madam Reporter, turn to, if you could read back that testimony. And I would be right 100% of the time.
So it made you better.
The ability to be the ability to be present in that. Rather, you said this before, we're either, and this happens even in direct examination, we're either asking our question or we're getting ready to ask the next question. This happens in our conversation in the office. We're rarely listening. We're rarely present enough. And so the gift of presence and attention and deep listening allowed my edge as a trial lawyer to be even sharper and more effective.
So we're just about at the end of our time. If listeners wanted to know more,
you always know how to be a
I know.
Like, wow.
So
like you said, we had 40.
So if our listeners wanted to learn more about mindfulness programs for themselves or for their firms, how do they get in touch with you? What resource could we offer to them?
All right. So I see you put it in the chat, my email. That's perfect. We also have it's Walt at summit-success.com. Happy to talk anytime. Happy to, supporting our great profession is one of my joys in life. However, I can support you after this call, after your boot camp, days, months, years down the line. Please know that you can always reach out to me. I will always respond to you. super, super grateful for this opportunity to share this time with you. Enjoy these precious last few days of summer. It will go by very, very fast. Really sink in and use the opportunity as you are in this amazing boot camp, Reboot camp, to do some good stuff for yourself. So thank you, Doug Brown.
Thank you, Walt. And so that's going to wrap up this episode of Law Firm Success Strategies. Thank you so much for joining us. You can check out more episodes of our show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and the Answering Legal YouTube channel. Bye for now.